Okay, good evening, everybody. I would like to call the meeting to order and announce that the board met in closed session and the following action was taken. Lynn Garverick was appointed vice principal for Myola Beitzel, and Tomasea McNeil, vice principal for Raymond Case and Franklin Elementary. I said the name right? I'm getting a nod. Tomasea. See, even I write it phonetically and I still messed up. I would also like to announce that tonight's meeting is being video recorded and will be available on the district's YouTube channel. I would like to announce that cards are available at the table just outside of the boardroom for anyone who wishes to address the board. If you wish to address the board, please complete a card and hand it to the staff member at the right of my side. Please be sure to complete the card indicating whether the matter you wish to address is on the agenda or not on the agenda. If the matter is on the agenda, we will assume you wish to speak when it comes time to address that item on the agenda, and we'll hold your card until that time. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and leading us is my colleague here, Mr. Forcina.
Please stand. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, for those just joining us, please feel free to have a seat. We do not have any presentations or recognitions this evening. There are no student expulsion recommendations. So next up would be our LCAP update, and I would like to call on Mr. Cerruti.
Good evening, President Singh Allen, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. As always, I appreciate the opportunity to provide the board an update on our local control accountability plan. Three things I'd like to share with the board this evening. The first is information about the approval of our LCAP by the Sacramento County Office of Education. I'd like to just very briefly recognize some key stakeholders that have been involved in the process of the development and approval. And then just a brief preview of what we'll be discussing related to the LCAP at the Thursday workshop. I'm pleased to inform the board that the Sacramento County Office of Education formally notified us Monday of the approval of our LCAP. We're in the beginning process of having the approved LCAP translated, and once completed, those versions will be posted. The approved version is posted online, and there was an interest in the board in having the site LCAPs posted, and those also have been posted online, and we're working on the translations of those as well. The development of the LCAP from the initial stages through the county's formal approval was a tremendous collaborative effort, and I want to just take a moment and acknowledge the involvement and support of key stakeholders. First of all, starting with you. As a board, you set high expectations and standards of deep stakeholder involvement in the LCAP process and educational service and accompanying budgetary decisions, utilizing a sound continuous improvement methodology along the way. Our superintendent, Mr. Hoffman, ensuring the board's expectations and standards were met in providing key leadership, guidance, and setting direction throughout the process. The superintendent's cabinet, we have an extremely strong and cohesive team. We've accurately identified immediate and long-range needs, advocating for needed programs and services, and ultimately leveraging the power of collective intelligence, bringing recommendations to you, the board, for consideration and approval. Tremendous stakeholder involvement in the process from our district advisory committee, our district English learner advisory committee, district finance committee, district special education advisory committee, the superintendent's certificated advisory, parent and student advisories, the support of all of our bargaining units, and especially the involvement of our school sites, because that's where we got the expanded involvement of key stakeholders at every one of our school sites. We closely examined our LCAP process along the way, and lastly, I want to recognize the work of the LCAP Consultation Committee, whose sole focus was on the LCAP process itself. I'd like to recognize the Sacramento County Office of Ed. Superintendent Gordon has established the county's role to be more than a simple gatekeeping approved or not approved function. He and his staff have provided vitally important education, support, and guidance as we all have been becoming increasingly familiar with the purpose, function, and requirements of the LCAP process. And I particularly want to express my appreciation to Tammy Sanchez, their Associate Superintendent of Business Services, Jan Mayer, the Director of District Technical Assistance, and Sue Stickle, a Deputy Superintendent. Sue and her team have provided the district and me invaluable guidance throughout the LCAP process. It was truly a collaborative partnership. And lastly, I would like to thank the three people who I spend a tremendous amount of time in the LCAP world with, and that is Shannon Stenroos, the Budget Director, Sanja Lowry, the Director of Learning Support Services, and Christine Akito, Director of Research and Evaluation. Their professional expertise and knowledge of the LCAP process are invaluable, and simply put, the LCAP process and product would not be of the exceptional quality it is if it were not for those three incredible people. And regarding the workshop on Thursday, I just want to let the board know that what we'll be focusing on Thursday is I'll lay out the 12-month LCAP process, because for the past several years our LCAP process has been condensed into a few months just by the nature of when information has rolled out, and we're truly into the first 12-month authentic, my words, cycle, and we'll share with the board what that looks like, and in particular we'll focus in on the needs analysis that takes place in our late fall months, and that will tie in directly to the October community meetings that you as a board will have, and we'll be able to preview a little bit the approach that we'll recommend bringing to the board for your consideration in terms of how we approach that, because we can use those meetings as an integral part of our needs analysis in sharing data, sharing outcomes, which we haven't had in the past, and we will have this year, at least with respect to the LCAP, and how we'll be gathering feedback from our constituents. And with that, any questions or comments you may have?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Cerruti, for that wonderful update. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? All right, I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand, so
Thank you.
I will thank you and looking forward to our update on Thursday. All right, we do not have a budget update this evening, and I do not have any blue cards for public comment. Oh, I spoke too soon. I'm getting one right now. All right, I'd like to call on Ms. Susan Mason. Good evening, Ms. Mason. And we have 3 minutes.
Good evening, President Singh Allen, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman. My name is Susan Mason. I came tonight because last month I came and asked about the notice of public hearings. And I said I had seen it in the Elk Grove Citizen and just wanted to know if I had missed something. You indicated that the public hearing notices are on the agenda. So I said, okay, and I think I asked, is that the only place? And you said yes. So the very next day when I got my Elk Grove Citizen, I noticed the notices, and they are in the public notice for the public hearing will be held as follows, and it talks about the budget hearing on special education, local planning and all. And then there's a public notice for the second reading of the ordinance to adopt the tax report. So I just thought that was interesting that you weren't aware of it. None of the board was. I thought it was interesting that none of the staff sitting behind me has ever did comment on it. So I just thought I'd bring it up and update you. Yes, you do have notices in here. It just kind of makes me wonder, it kind of makes me question any other information I hear if you're not aware of that. And I think that's important when you want to have public hearings. Anyway, I just wondered if you investigated it after last meeting, or did you care to, or what was going on. Anyway, then I just noticed on the agenda for tonight, and I didn't bring it up here, the textbook and curriculum, there's something about that, and I hadn't seen a public hearing notice on it. So I was just wouldn't be prepared for it. I did go through the budget that's online, and I didn't see anything special for special education, which is what the public hearing is for tonight. And all I could do was kind of pull out, when I looked at line by line, some of the special education notes. So it was really hard for me as a citizen, just looking at what going online and looking at the website to understand the special education budget. So I just thought I'd let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, and just for a point of clarification, I do believe that the board did state that our primary way of communicating to the public is our website with our agenda online, not that we weren't aware of what Mr. Herberger publishes. He's an integral part of communicating with our community.
Right, but I think public hearings are legal, so there is time frames. I think I've heard that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I know we can't engage in a discussion about this, but just for purposes of having the information out there, I would love it if Mr. Hoffman or anyone on staff could talk about noticing for the particular agenda items up tonight, whether or not we met the requirements, since there was a question raised about that.
Thank you,
Yes,
Ms.
we
Sherrill.
have done all the notices. What I can do is put together a BC that goes through all those processes to make sure we're all on the same page. And if Ms. Mason will contact me, I can have a conversation and actually outline that to make sure we're all clear about what that process looks like, because we don't want confusion.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to ask if any bargaining unit wishes to address the board? Nope, okay, moving on. There are no reports, so we are at our public hearing action items. Elk Grove Unified School District Community Facilities District, 2015-2016 tax report, and second reading of ordinance number 1, 2015-2016.
Thank you,
Mr.
President
Pierce.
Singh Allen, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. This is the second reading. I gave the board an extensive report at the July 21st general board meeting. So we held a public hearing at that time, and we received no public comment from tax or property owners. I would ask if the board had any follow-up questions from our report at July 21st. This ordinance, upon your adoption, will be delivered to the county assessor's office tomorrow. Again, it establishes your tax roll for the 2015-2016 tax year, and there's a 2% increase overall in your tax base, which is a really good thing, given that it's only the second year in a row since the recession that we've had any growth. In those prior years, we had 5 years of decline. So it's a sign of things coming back. We're excited about that, but again, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Short of any questions, please hold a public hearing, close the public hearing, and adopt ordinance number 1, 2015-16.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Pierce? All right, I'd like to call for a public hearing on the Elk Grove Unified School District's Facilities District 2015-2016 tax report. All right, I'd like to close the public hearing and call for a motion to approve the Elk Grove Unified School District Facilities District tax report. And I would like to call for a roll call vote.
Beth Alviani. Aye. Nancy Chairs Espinosa.
Aye.
Carmen Forcina. Aye. Chip Madison. Aye. Dr. Crystal Martinez-Alir.
Aye.
Anthony Perez.
Aye.
Bobby Singh Allen.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda, we have our pupil textbook and instructional materials. I'd like to call on Mr. Cerruti. No, I see Ms. Ewing coming. My notes say Mr. Cerruti. Welcome, Ms. Ewing.
I'm happy to be him.
Yes.
So good evening, President Singh Allen, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Hoffman, and Ms. Avalos. As a requirement of the Williams legislation and Education Code 60119, the Board of Education shall hold a public hearing during the first 8 weeks of instruction and make a determination through a resolution as to whether each student in each school has sufficient textbooks or instructional materials in all core areas, which include English language arts, mathematics, history, social science, and science, and that they are aligned with the content standards and consistent with the current curriculum framework cycles. The Education Code also requires us to make a written determination that every student enrolled in world languages, or health also has sufficient textbooks or instructional materials, and that students enrolled in lab science courses have sufficient laboratory science equipment. This resolution certifies that each student in the Elk Grove Unified School District has textbooks and instructional materials consistent with these guidelines. I would now like to request that the Board of Education open the public hearing, and I will bring this resolution back to the next board meeting on September 1st as an action item, unless you wish to take action this evening.
Well, it's agendized as just for the public hearing, so I don't want to jump that in case someone has any issues. So I think in terms of noticing and making sure that the public has adequate time for input, I would prefer holding off if that's okay. So with that, I would like to call for a public hearing on resolution number 7, 2015-2016, that certifies that K-12 instructional materials monies are expended in compliance with the Pupil Textbook and Instructional Materials Incentive Program Act, ensuring that each pupil will have sufficient instructional materials. All right, I will close the public hearing and call for a motion to approve resolution number 7. But we're going to hold off on the actual motion till our next meeting. So does anybody have any questions from the board? All right.
And I would like to just mention for the board that in regards to the public comment and the posting of the public hearing, the law requires for 3 public postings. We actually exceed that. We have it posted in 5 public places, and I'm happy to provide that information to Superintendent Hoffman so that the board is aware that this hearing was posted in 5 different public locations. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Ewing. All right, the evening of public hearings. Next up, all right, Mr. Tolstrup, public hearing of the Elk Grove Unified's annual service delivery budget plan for special education.
Ms. Singh Allen, members of the board, Superintendent Hoffman, we'd ask that we open a public hearing on the annual service delivery and budget plan for special education, which is an annual requirement by the state, which through the service delivery plan, it outlines what services are available at what schools that Elk Grove is responsible for, and the budget and how it's allocated and what resources are spent. So we request that the board open up public hearing.
Okay. I'd like to call for a public hearing for anyone who wishes to speak to the Elk Grove Unified School District Annual Service Delivery Budget Plan for Special Education. All right, I will close the public hearing, and then before taking our motion here, do any of my colleagues have questions or comments? Mr. Forcina.
Yeah, Bill, the budget that you've submitted details how we will expend funds we receive.
Correct.
And it's a question I probably should ask before. For your total special education budget, is that budget detail the funds that you receive, as you're showing here, along with the contributions made to special ed by the general fund? The sum $35 million?
Correct. It's included in that budget
Okay.
plan. It's the entire cost of operating the special education program in the district.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I'd like to make one quick comment.
certainly.
Thank you for the report. Great level of detail. I was pleased to see that while we don't offer every service at every site, it seems that we do somewhere in the district offer every service that's listed here in the table that you've provided. I was also pleased to see it looks like the recent addition of music therapy for autistic students. I understand that that there have been a lot of advancements there. So thank you for the work that you do.
Any other colleagues for questions or comments?
I have a question regarding funding. How can I know the total amount you get from Prop 30 LCAP monies for special funding?
Well, that would be a budget question. I'm not sure that we receive any direct LCAP funding for our special education budget. We do put the LCAP contributions in there as far as supplemental and concentrated forms are in there. So those are represented in the LCAP. And currently, that is a part of the LCAP plan. So it delineates in that document the amount of money that comes indirectly from LCAP.
So that's not reflected within this budget?
It's in that budget.
Which part is that?
It's in the overall. Those are resource codes. They don't specifically break them out by funding source. There are many funding sources that come in for special education. There's federal dollars, IDEA, there's state Prop 98 dollars, and there are LCAP contributions and various funding sources. However, in the annual budget plan, we're not required to detail out which source is funding what. It's just what are the resources being expended for based on
Well,
student needs.
I was told by staff that 7,000 monies code numbers were from LCAP.
Different codes, Mr. Perez. You're talking about management codes. These are resource codes.
Right, but
Different
also in the
tracking.
regs within the LCAP.
I'm sorry?
Also, within the regs within the LCAP, they stated that we shall keep codes of the supplemental and concentration funding,
Yeah, but
funding.
those 7,000s aren't directly related. Some of them may be, but they're no direct correlation with these codes that are in your report.
But you just mentioned that some of that money's
Track-
within this budget.
We're tracking expenditures for LCAP and the general fund correctly.
Right.
We're meeting all the requirements for that.
I didn't say anything about meeting requirements. I'm asking where in this report and how much is spent
This is not, that's not
from
included in this-
concentration
That's not included in this
and
report.
supplemental funds for special ed.
Yeah, I'm sorry, say it again?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't understand what you were
Okay,
asking.
in this report, it does not reflect how much money we spend on special ed students from funding, from concentration and
That's correct.
supplemental.
That's correct.
But you mentioned, well, I just heard just a minute ago that that money's reflected in this budget.
It might be.
It might be, yes or no?
I don't know. I would have to go look.
Well, like I said, I just heard that it is, now it might be.
No, I said it might be included. Some of the 7,000s might be included in here. I would have to go look. It's a $500 million budget, Mr. Perez. I
Right.
don't have the entire budget memorized.
Well, it's a very important issue because,
I'm aware of that.
okay,
These are, I think just in general terms for any of our board members, when we have very specific questions like that, again, I invite you to have those discussions with Mr. Fagan so that it's not awkward up here and we're, maybe not understanding what we're trying to convey. So, but those can be easily settled by having those discussions and meetings beforehand so that you have a better understanding of what your question is and so how he can best support you as a board member. So I would invite you to do that.
This is just a different report. This is specifically special ed, does not break out, have the type of level of breakout that you're talking about.
Let me ask you this.
It's broken out in the LCAP, and we have other reports that we could provide that would document that information.
Is this a total budget funding for special ed?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So somewhere within this budget is supplemental and concentration funding?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's all I know. Thank you.
Okay, no other questions here from my colleagues. I want to thank you for a very transparent and informative report. And with that, I'd like to call for a motion to approve Elk Grove Unified's annual service delivery budget plan for special education. I'd like a motion.
I move approval, the budget for special ed.
We have a motion to approve for Mr. Fortuna. I need a second.
Second.
Second for Ms. Albiani. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any noes? Abstentions?
One abstention, Tony Perez, because of the fact that there's not an accurate breakdown of supplemental and concentration funds in the report. Our last budget report was the same issue. we presently have an issue that we have to deal with through an outside source. So I guess that will be up on the agenda next meeting in September.
Okay, not knowing where you're coming from or what you just said, I would again invite
Okay,
you
I
to have
will,
those.
I will
let you-
clarify that, okay, if you don't understand, you know and I know, we received a letter from public advocates, right?
We receive hundreds of letters on a daily basis. That's irrelevant to what we're talking about right now.
But it's not irrelevant.
It is.
It's dealing with concentration and supplemental fundings, and they are challenging us how we spend our money. They're asking for information.
And like
And-
anybody
and-
else who asks information of our district, we will provide that as we always do in a very transparent manner. So thank you for your comments. And we will move on now to our discussion items. Revisions to Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness, Mr. Cerruti. Or no, Mr. Tolcher. You guys are giving me the wrong codes here. I'm kidding.
Yes, we'd like to bring forward some revisions to Board Policy 5030. This is to incorporate and add a bit of strength to the wellness policy regarding not only nutrition, but also psychological well-being of our students. So as you can see, marked in red, we also have added that there be opportunities provided for students to further develop their social, emotional, and psychological well-being, hereafter referred to as wellness. And if you think of the tagline of wellness, it's healthy body, healthy minds, healthy learning. And so what our quest to do with this revision was to bolster that. In the previous BP and in the state school boards, there was just one line about psychological well-being, and so we wanted to bolster that in light of the need for a lot of social, emotional, and psychological well-being training, from bullying to various aspects such as PBIS. This heretofore has been handled on what was called Coordinated School Health Council or Committee, and we've asked that that committee now be deemed the Wellness Advisory Committee, WAC for short. And as you look through it, if you go back to page number 4, you will see where we've bolstered the social, emotional, and psychological well-being, that students' social emotional wellness is a critical building block of students' overall well-being, a student's positive perception of self and their ability to positively interact with peers, adults, and community have a direct effect on students' sense of well-being and academic achievement. District staff and school volunteers will support practices and build relationships to promote and will ensure that students are learning in an intellectually challenging environment that's physically and emotionally safe, and in which students are engaged in their learning and are connected to the school and broader community. District staff will be responsible for implementing PBIS or positive behavior support plans to eliminate or reduce high-risk behaviors, bullying, and stress at school sites, and will otherwise ensure the safety and well-being of students through a comprehensive plan that offers psychological and other counseling services, strategies to educate students, parents, and staff about how to live a healthy lifestyle. Then it goes on to talk about the fact that we will bring a report to the board on an annual basis and update the board on the efforts and the progress of the Wellness Advisory Committee at least once per year. So with that, I would request that the board approve these amendments to the board policy and would field any questions. These were worked on by myself, Director Michelle Drake from Nutrition, and Carl Steinauer from Student Support and Health Services, as we all kind of work towards that consistency in our discipline and in our nutrition and in our psychological well-being policies.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tolchip, and it's minor, this is just a first reading, so we are not taking any motions, correct? That's what I have here.
Right.
Okay, so any questions or comments from my colleagues on this change, or update, I should say? Mr. Perez.
Page 5, you state that the board shall establish a plan for measuring implementation of the policy. Is there a time frame for that, and what actual
It's my understanding that a board member will become a member of our Wellness Advisory Committee, and we will set up matrix with that group. We have our first meeting coming up shortly, where we will put together a monitoring plan and report back to the board.
Okay, and number two, under the superintendent or designee shall recommend, same page, recommend for board approval specific quality indicators that will be used to measure the implementation of the policy district-wide. And when would that, is there a time frame for that also? Is
The
a
metrics-
calendar?
Okay, the metrics will be the same as we do. We will be looking at various things. Students, the physical PE tests, our discipline, suspensions, expulsions, our nutrition plans. Those will all be part of the metrics that we developed, and we'll report back to the board on those indicators.
Would some of these also be overlapping LCAP indicators? I kind of see a little bit of
Absolutely.
that.
Yes, because school climate is a big part of the
Right.
LCAP. It's one of the 8 priorities.
Right.
We're very cognizant of that, and we're also aware that a lot of the research currently is saying that one of the primary indicators of students' long-term success is their pro-social skills. And this also supports Common Core in the fact that there are a lot of social-emotional standards embedded in the Common Core.
Also, my last question is, you mentioned we're going to have a committee.
Yes.
How many members are going to be in that?
It's a rather large committee. We have board members, we have directors, we have program specialists, we have Kaiser, we have safe credit unions. It's a rather large committee.
Right.
We can obviously give you the name of who's on that committee, but there
It's a
are
pre-existing
approximately about
committee.
30 to 40 members of that, including Mac Road Partnership, and
Oh, I assume that it was just a new meeting, so it's ongoing right now,
it's
correct?
an ongoing, it's the
But
old
with a
Coordinated
different
School
name.
Health. Yes.
Okay, I got that clear. Very good, excellent. I support this 100%. I'd like to see more, maybe possible a clinic at some of our high schools also in the near future.
The whole separate discussion, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right, and I just really appreciate all of our efforts to update all of our policies in general and be in compliant with the law and CSBA's sample policy. So thank Mr. Hoffman and our staff for that. All right, next up, we do not have any discussion items. Mr. Fortuna, did you have a?
Weren't we going to approve it?
No, this is just a first read. Yep. Yep. So we are on to board member and superintendent reports. And I'm pretty sure that we did not have any committee meetings since our last. Mr. Hoffman, do you have anything for us?
I will share a couple things very quickly. As you know, we are back in the school building business, and we opened up 2 schools this past week, Mary Mix and Dillard, both phenomenal sites. And we did the full-blown opening celebration at Mix, and we will be inviting the board to the Dillard. We are still a bit of an active construction site, safe and a great place to be, but an active construction site nonetheless, just as it was last year when we had the new building going up and kids still in the old building. So we'll be doing that in October, and invitations will be out shortly. So I want to thank everyone involved with getting those schools, including the board for the support and direction in getting those schools done, and Mr. Pierce and his department and the site administrators. Everyone did a great job. Also do want to share, take the time to acknowledge the passing of a teacher, Dan Goldman. He worked at 3 of our school sites, served hundreds of kids over the years, and was a colleague and friend to many, and he will be missed.
Thank you for that update, Mr. Hoffman. And we are on to the consent agenda. Mr. Fortuna.
Yes, I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda, items number 1 through 21.
All right, we have a motion to approve consent agendas items from Mr. Fortuna. Do we have a second? Ms. Chaitis Espinosa, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any noes, abstentions? Nice. All right, other items from the floor before we adjourn. Mr. Fortuna.
Yes, I do. I have one. Several months ago, I requested that the board agendize for discussion an item on developing a policy on our reserves. And at the time I did that, we were being requested to approve a resolution, and also at that time, the conditions that were present are different than the conditions today. It's an unresolved issue, and at this point in time, I want to withdraw my request for policy on reserve.
Okay.
So we do not have to act on it at this point in time.
Okay, thank you for our update. Anybody else? Mr. Madison?
Yeah, I just would like a little clarification on abstaining and voting no or yes on my colleague, Mr. Perez, on the special ed. My understanding, are you to abstain, or you don't want to vote against it, you should put no? I just want some clarification from all of us here. Abstain.
I think board communication on what aye means, what no means, and what abstention means, because it's my understanding abstentions are conflicts of interest.
Yes.
So unless you have a conflict of interest for that which is being presented for some reason, then you state what that is and you abstain. So I think, or just vote no. So I think it would be helpful to get a board communication so we're all on the same page, so that the next time we do take action, an abstention is truly within the meaning of the law of what it's supposed to be for.
Madam Chair, if I might add, it'd be helpful if that board communication could reference whatever our current board bylaws are about that.
Yes.
I'd appreciate that, because we should clarify that moving on, so we understand.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I don't have any outstanding floor items to address other than, the Marion Mix ribbon cutting was fantastic. Just a tremendous excitement in the air with the students, with our fabulous new principal. So it's a wonderful asset to our community, and you could definitely feel that at our event. So I want to thank everybody that made that day possible, and for all those that attended. And then, of course, our Sac County Teachers of the Year. That event was also very successful. We have dynamic educators in our district, so I'm just very proud of all of them, including the two that were obviously honored. So with that, I will go ahead and adjourn our meeting. See you all Thursday.
Thank you.